we are going to lead into some baseball. Obviously, one of the more disappointing weekends of the year, which is saying a lot, being how this team started SEC play, not winning a series until they beat then number one Tennessee on the road. I think you and I both kind of entered with the same expectations. I thought they'd at least get one win, especially in game 3, which, as we know, they led 4-2 until very reliable relief pitcher Weston Moss kind of had one of his worst outings, and then pretty much anybody who came in after that really couldn't keep the Longhorns away. Caden McCoy was the last pitcher they had that allowed a solo home run to Adrian Gonzalez. Is it Gonzalez? Yeah. Making it 6-5. Obviously, they went 3 and out in the 9th and were swept on Sunday afternoon. But you really have to go back to game 1 and the starting pitching. And, it's really interesting because I knew coming in that Ryan Prager was going to give them, enough. And he hadn't really done that a ton in SEC play. Obviously, a very high ERA for an ace. 5.2 innings, 3 strikeouts, 1 earned run, and then you kind of go down the list of they lost 2-1 in that game. You go to Saturday, Justin Lampkin, 5.1 innings, 1 earned run, 8 strikeouts, only 2 walks allowed. You again lose, I believe it's 3-2. And then Miles Patton, who has been, very, very consistent, very reliable as that day 3 starter. Again, 5.2 innings, 3 runs allowed, which one of them was an error, I believe. And then, he just needed to get out of there. 5 strikeouts, just 2 walks. And in any of those starts, you can win, right? They're giving you a chance to win. And that's been the problem for, most of the SEC, most of SEC play outside of obviously their streak after beating Tennessee, then sweeping South Carolina and winning the series against Arkansas. It is fair to say that Tennessee and Arkansas, who have had kind of some wonky turnouts after A&M beat them, they haven't been very consistent. Texas does look like the best team in the country right now. They do have the best pitching staff. Credit to Max Weiner, obviously former A&M pitching coach, who is probably going to end up being a head coach in the SEC very, very soon. It's not embarrassing to lose to that team. I will say that. It's just the way it happened. And a lot of it is just the fact that obviously, yes, it's the rivalry. You don't want to lose to Texas. Their fan base is relentless, and you're going to have to hear about it now until you potentially meet each other in the postseason. But you just thought this team had enough momentum to either win the series or just eke out one to get into the week and get a little more momentum, because now, and I wrote about it earlier this week, that they still have a very good chance of making the NCAA tournament. And that's the thing I don't think a lot of fans want to hear right now, and that's really what I'm getting to, is that when you lose the way you did by 1 run each game, and you knew that you were just a couple more hits away from winning the series and then going into the week on a high note, you now have to play number 2 LSU at home. So that's a positive. Missouri, who's the worst SEC team I've ever seen in my life. I mean, I don't know if that team's going to win an SEC game this year, but either way, you get them at home. You finish the regular season on the road against Georgia, who obviously is one of the better offensive teams in the country. You need 5 wins. They are about 8-12 in SEC play. You probably need, and I've heard this from sources, Kendall Rogers, obviously D1 baseball is pretty reliable. He said the other day that 13 wins is most likely going to get you in like that. And we can do the math that win the series versus LSU, win this, sweep Missouri, you're in, right? Maybe win a game against Georgia, you're in. Can they do it? I mean, I believe they can. It's just, I kind of came away from that, and I don't want to draw on. I want to get your perspective, but, I don't know if this was all emotional based. I don't know if this was a mental thing. We saw Jace Lavalette, who had one of his worst outings of the season. I believe he was 1 for 9 after, being named SEC Player of the Week based on his performance against Arkansas. And And a lot of people, including myself, kind of saw, I don't know if this team was ready to handle that situation, facing Jim Schlossnagle again. But get your take on that.
Yeah, I mean, overall, I feel the fan base was overall disappointed, we'll say, getting swept by a total combined of 3 runs. Uh, that kind of sums up the entire discussion, doesn't it? Um, but going into that Friday, I mean, you and I talked about it this past week. We thought it would be this slow grind out game where some either team kind of scores only 3 or 4 runs. Um, like you said, Jace did not have the most impressive weekend, and it kind of felt like the hits that A&M was actually getting up at the plate just weren't carrying over that wall. You could see a lot of them going back, a couple 100 yards, but it just didn't feel like it had the lift underneath. Um, Now everybody wants to contribute it to nerves, emotions, everything like that. I think it really just came down to um, who, and I'm going to use the Jimbo quote, who executed better. And the fact is that Texas, the Longhorns did execute at home better than the Aggies did in this series. There was a lot of hope going into Saturday that the Aggies would just bounce right back, be angry that they only lost by 1 and come out swinging. And for the most part, they did come out swinging, but we did see a very, very talented relief pitcher for Texas come out for them and kind of shut down the rest of what A&M wanted to do in that game. And then Sunday, I think by that point, it was already tensions were high. You saw the Gavin Cash stuff that happened in that Saturday game. You go into that Sunday game and tail of the tape, lose by 1 run again. So really just kind of a gut punch for the Aggie fans. But I think that overall, when you look at it, Texas is the number 1 team for a reason. They are good. So if you can, and it's not acceptable to say, hey, we lost 3 in a row to the rivals, to a number 1 team, and feel okay about it. But coming from, you went into Tennessee and got a 2 out of 3 win. You went against Arkansas, got that series win as well, and you're gonna end up losing one. Straight up, that's just how it is. There's no perfect team in baseball that I've seen recently, we'll say, but you're going to lose some. Now, it just so happened that you did lose it to the rivals, which is even more of an emotional loss than it would be. But I think tonight we'll see it again. I mean, they are playing Lamar. I don't know if we have a score update on that, but you're going to go into this weekend feeling quite okay with where you are and just kind of making it down this stretch towards Omaha if you can.
Yeah, they're up 3-1. Ben Royo has continued to be the team's MVP. He hit a home run to make it 2-1, and then he flew out to score Bender up for a 3-1 lead. They were in the top of the 5th right now, so it is kind of funny how Ben Royo, of all people on that team, has ended up being, probably the most consistent player on that roster outside of Caden Sorrell. And that's the thing. I agree with you. I don't ever really buy it. I mean, I did have a reason to believe that a lot of this was probably mental, because we do forget. And look, I hate to say this, but credit to Jim Schlossnagle after the game, because he just kept it businesslike of saying, I know this A&M team. I recruit a lot of these guys. I mean, he didn't say that, but you know what he meant. They kind of alluding to, I know who they are. I know they're talented enough, and I trust that early, and then we'll lead them to the postseason. Now, like, a lot of coaches do that. We remember back in the 21 Texas A&M the 2021 Texas A&M basketball season, when they kind of ran through everybody in the SEC tournament. They lost to Tennessee, and every coach was going, that team deserves to be in the tournament. It doesn't matter if coaches say it, right? You have to do it yourself. And it is going to be very interesting. I mean, you need to beat Lamar, obviously. You need to keep winning those midweek games, but all they really care about are your SEC wins. It is something to note that the way that they lost was actually better than the way that some other teams have lost to Texas at Dish Falk this season. LSU, who they're about to play this weekend, did not have a great showing. They did win the first game, but they got beat by, multiple runs in both and did not look good at all. LSU also was swept by Auburn, who beat the socks off of them for most of that series on the road. And then LSU, I believe this weekend won the series versus Tennessee. So this is just the SEC, right? This is just what it is. It is, I mean, Mississippi State just fired their head coach who, led the Bulldogs to a national championship less than 5 years ago. So it's never going to be perfect. I know that A&M fans, especially kind of, I guess they call them the 2%ers or whatever it is, of they're not really paying attention a lot to the details. It's just wins and losses. Oh, if you lose, you're bad. Fire Michael Early, tough stuff like that. But here's the thing: what they've done so far, picking themselves up from being in the dumpster fire they were of SEC play and beating some of the best teams in the conference, sweeping a South Carolina team that had its moments this season. It isn't one of the best, obviously, but doing that at home the way you did, especially the comeback they had in Game 3 of that series, and having one letdown that every team's had. It's just that A&M has had more of those. Granted, I just don't think it's fair to talk about when they were swept by Vanderbilt and in the beginning of the season, because this team wasn't who they are now, right? They just weren't. They didn't have Caden Sorrell back. They didn't have the identity, and I think they had a really good showing for all three games in certain aspects. It's just like you said, Texas made the clutch hits when they needed to. That's the difference, right? The pitching is great. They probably have the best closer in all of college baseball. That's great. I'm not surprised by that, because I knew coming into this, I remember someone asked me, how good is Texas going to be? And I said, well, it's going to depend on the pitching. It's going to depend on how many good arms does Max Wiener have? Well, he's already proven. And I think Jim Slosnick would tell you, look, if I didn't have Max Wiener, we would not be 19-2 and close to setting an SEC record or whatever it is, because that's how important these positional coaches are. And in baseball, if you don't have pitching, you're not going to win a lot of games. So A&M can't blame their starters. They can't really even blame their bullpen, even though there were some home runs given up. And the fact that obviously A&M's only home run of the series in that dreaded park where I swear they're cursed there from getting home runs was Caden Sorrell, who is probably a first-round pick in the 2026 MLB draft, who just powered that thing out. And, getting to my point of what they need to do to get back to the postseason and kind of wipe away this terrible weekend that A&M fans don't want to relive is guys like Caden Sorrell, Jace Lavalette, and especially Bear Harrison. Caden Kent is another name who had a terrible weekend. Mr. Clutch became one of the more letdown guys every time he stepped up to the plate. They all know that if they don't play consistently, they're really, it's almost offensive to your starting pitching, right? Because they're giving it their all right now. Like Prager was emotional. He was doing everything in his power to keep the score low. And I think the way they lost, I remember he gave a post-game press conference. You could just tell, man, he was just sad. Just like, what else can I do, right? And you don't want that to happen the rest of these series, because you don't want to be that team that, you're almost there, but, oh man, LSU hit a home run in the ninth, or you were up by 2 and now you're down by 1. You don't want to be that team. So hit the ball, consistently, and allow your starting pitching to thrive, because you've got enough pieces to make it back there. I'm not saying this team is going to make some deep run. I'm not saying that this is a College World Series finals type of team. I'm just saying that what we saw against Texas, yes, it was a letdown. They lost, but I think A&M already proved that if they can get the job done in the end of the regular season, these teams can meet again, and it's going to be all the marbles, right? It's not going to be some semi-meaningless, meaningless for Texas, I guess, but regular season matchup.
Exactly. I think it's time for the Aggies to wash their hands and move on. And I think we're going to see a little bit of that with Lamar tonight. I know we had changed up the batting order a little bit for tonight just to kind of get a refreshing view. We did see Jace up first, and maybe that's something that someone smarter with baseball lineups can tell me. But what you really need to see is from these other guys, like you said, like a Ben Royo, Terrence Keel, we really need to see what is going to be the overall plus from them in those batting orders. And from what I saw pitching, it was incredible, the emotion that was brought out from Prager. and all these guys that uh, am I wrong? Prager was kind of the one that showed a little bit more emotion than.
I mean, they all did. I would say that I haven't played baseball in years, but I can think back that obviously when you're in a position that you have a game where you're on the mound, you basically give up nothing. I mean, essentially, when you have had situations where you're giving up 4 or 5 runs, they have to pull you after four, and you just kind of look at it like, damn, like, well, they can blame me after this. Especially in this series where you're going against the number one team that's proven they're one of the best. They haven't lost in a C series yet, and you give your team a chance like that, it's a huge letdown, right? I think that Lampkin and Patton, I don't know if they really spoke after the game. I'd have to look back, but I think they're happy about their improvement. I would say that Prager is the vet. He is the guy who could have gone to the MLB last year, obviously for when his contract with the Angels. But I think it's just he wants to get back to the postseason. Like he knows that it's going to take good performances from him combined with good enough offense to do that. So I think, losing your rivals, losing Schlossnagel, who obviously recruited you, and it's just the whole emotional aspect of it. But see, that's the thing. I didn't even mention Royo and Terrence Keel. Obviously, I should, but they were great. They did their job. That's the thing. Like A&M's been like that this year, and it's kind of it's baseball in general, right? It's like when your star players aren't stepping up, somebody has to, and it's usually the guys who are kind of playing like crap earlier, and they kind of come back and are more consistent. Terrence Keel is not one of those players. He's been good all season, I would say. He did, he struck out in one of the games to end it, but he did have some key hits. He had a hit to give him a chance in the ninth in Game 3. So it's like if those guys are giving you enough, and your star players are giving you enough, then you have a chance against everybody. That's the thing.
Exactly.
I think fans get away from who this team is structurally. They are still one of the best rosters in the country, and they've proven that. They proved that against Tennessee, South Carolina, and Arkansas. They pretty much dominated those series outside of one game each, right? And that's it. So we're too late in the season to start nitpicking and saying like, well, are they actually that good? It's like we're going to hear that a lot with A&M football next year because
Exactly.
we're going to hear like, oh, no, they had such a hot start, but in October they kind of it's like it's completely different in that aspect because when you play in football, you play kind of an easier schedule. You play a tougher outside conference opponent. If you do well against them, it raises expectations. You go into conference play. If you have some letdowns against teams that kind of know you better, it's harder to gauge that team then because it's a completely different team because they performed against a program that doesn't know them as well. It's just that. So A&M has already told us who they are, right? And even though they didn't have the best series at the plate, they don't need us to doubt them anymore. We just want to see it. That's the thing. You just want to see. You want to see them put together a great series this weekend, get past Lamar. They're up 4-1 right now, if anybody needs an update.
Yeah.
And again, just live up to these expectations because this is the last year for a lot of these guys. That's the thing. Like, you look at guys like Levelette and Prager, they came back for a reason. They didn't just come back to play for Michael Early, which, again, that narrative is getting tiring. But they came back because they knew we can get back to where we were or close to it with this roster and with obviously getting Wyatt Hensler on the team and getting Terrence Keel and getting all these new contributors. But yeah, it's just not that confusing to me, right? It's just do your job, right? Do your job. That's the most coach speak thing I can say.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, going back, I am watching on a different screen over here of up to date for this game, and as we were talking, Wyatt Hensler hits one over the fence. So you bringing him up, he has been. I really want to give Wyatt his flowers because he has been a great addition to this squad. For what Mike Early was trying to do this year, and I think that goes a little bit over people's heads with how the start to the season was. But I do want to give him his flowers.
Yeah, Hensler. That was the most frustrating thing I think a part of the entire weekend for me when I was covering the games. That wind, right? Wind is a baseball's enemy, and that was a grand slam.
It was
that maybe would have ended the game. I don't know, but I remember I'll have to give credit to John Patterson, one of the best Aggie follows of one of the Aggie alums, who's just, he's just a great follow on X for anybody who wants another person to gain some perspective from. I will say he gives actually good perspective from a guy who obviously doesn't cover the team professionally, but is a baseball guy. He just said that's going to come back to haunt them, and I was like, nope, he was right.
No, he was exactly right.
You saw it just trail back, and you're going, he got a hit after, and he got an excellent hit that gave him 2 ribbies, but it's just one of those things. It's just one of those series. I'm glad it's over. I don't want to talk about it anymore. Obviously, they could end up playing each other again, but I think what you can kind of take away from it was that if you're just an outside baseball fan, it was good baseball. It was a good baseball series. Good baseball. And I saw, a lot of Texas fans gave A&M credit because even though they won the series and swept them, you can laugh and go, oh, we swept. It's like, well, you didn't sweep them like most sweeps go. It was very close, and it was obviously very hotly contested. And I think the biggest thing that it proved was that A&M belongs with the other big boys. It's just they don't have the record with some of them. And that's obviously going to be the biggest fault and why they have to obviously win 5 games over their next 3 series to just get in, probably as a 2 seed, I would think, in the regional round. And look, I'll say this. If this team comes into the NCAA tournament hot, and let's say they win a couple series in a row, or at least win 2 and then, lose the series to Georgia, maybe win a couple games in the SEC tournament, I wouldn't want to play them. I wouldn't want to play them because I know that your team completely switches when you get to the postseason. It's one of those things where you just got to get there, right? It's like the NCAA tournament in basketball. You just get there, just get to the tournament, and then it completely resets, and you can get back to the mentality you had last season when you made that College World Series run. I think that's really all we can say about baseball right now, honestly.
Right, exactly. But people just gotta to wash their hands, get ready to watch.
I agree. No, that's the best term to say. Is like wash your hands of this, because look, I'm not gonna call it all Longhorn fans, but a lot of them are going to use this for the rest of the year of saying, well, anytime A&M fans make a joke, it's going to be, well, we swept you. And I guess they can use that. But I really want to see these teams meet again. I think that getting them in the summer and as pissed off as both of them will be, getting this out of the way. I kind of wish it was a little earlier in the season, to be honest with you. I get, obviously they would meet within the next month or 2 months or month. But look, it's one of the greatest rivalries in sports, and that's why there's a lot of hate between both of them. And, it's very entertaining, but they just got to get it. They got to get the job done. And if they do wash their hands and they get this out of their system, then I have no doubts that they will get back there. And we'll preview the LSU series maybe at the end, but it's one of those situations where you can look at LSU's ranking, but you can also look at Tennessee's ranking then and Arkansas's ranking then. It doesn't matter. And you're going to get them at home. And if you get in there and think, you know what, we've beaten a lot of good teams here, because a lot of it's a mental game. Yeah. And I will say that criticizing Weston Moss is probably a little hard. We did hear after the game he was dealing with some appendix issues, was not feeling the best, because I think all of us watched him get out there and look extremely the confidence level looked completely off. He just did not look like himself. Obviously dealing with some health issues. We hope that he's okay going forward, because he's another guy. That's going to be a big piece to their success, because we know that Prager Weston Moss combination in game 1s to get you off to a good start, which we'll probably see on Friday, that's going to be huge if they can make this run to get back to the tournament.